Well, welcome back to the shop again, guys. And believe it or not, I have my motorhome torn apart for one last upgrade, and I thought I would share it with you guys. A number of videos ago, I said I had only like 4 more updates I wanted to do on the motorhome. And the last one is right here in my hand. We're going to install a Garnet See Level II monitor panel with the 3 holding tanks on the RV. Hopefully you can see this has a Bluetooth emblem on it because this is Bluetooth capable, and it does have an app. So I guess the first question is, why am I installing this? Because it's the best in the industry. These are the contactless sensors that just mount on the side of the tank, and almost the entire industry has moved to this manufacturer and these styles because these are actually industrial grade. And they work. They don't get dirty. You don't get bad readings from them. Now, that may not have completely answered the question why I have to put a whole new monitor panel in, because my RV, my 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder, was equipped with a very early Silverleaf system on it. While it may not be from Silverleaf Company proper, they call it the coach monitor panel, the CMP-20, and it also has digital readouts for the freshwater tank, the gray water tank, and the black tank, and of course the propane. And I can also get all that same information on my dash right here. When I'm driving down the road, I can just hit info, and look at that, freshwater tank, gray tank, black tank, LP. And this is actually pretty impressive. Even in 2025, a lot of motorhomes still don't have this information on the dash for the driver when you're driving down the road. Now, unlike a lot of monitor panels of the time, and even currently, this does not use those 4 well nuts that are drilled in the side of the tank and just read 1/3, 2/3, or full. This actually has a pressure transducer in it, and that was part of the monitor panel right there. It's pretty much the exact same system that most Silverleaf monitor panels used up until about 10 years ago. And if I go to my Silverleaf kit right here, they use a very similar pressure transducer on those systems too. There's even a converter for different harnesses. And if you remember, a few years ago, I explained how Aladdin systems work and how to reset the 0 on those. And this is what those look like. Again, it's a very similar concept to that pressure transducer there. And this system actually does work really well when it works. As you can imagine, water, of course wastewater for sure, will probably start to clog these things up over time. And water tends to break anything just by itself anyways. Now, surprisingly, on my monitor panel, the waste tanks really aren't the issue. If we go here, gray tank's reading empty, I did just dump the tanks. Black tank's reading empty, I did just dump the tanks. If I go to freshwater tank, it's reading 73%. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed when we were down here, my freshwater tank level is almost empty. Water line's right about there. So there's a problem with my pressure transducer. Now, I did make a video about how to reprogram those and reset the system, just like we did with the Aladdin, using these sensors right here. Because the pressure transducer might lose its parameters a little bit, so you can empty the tank, set the 0, fill the tank, set the 0, and that way the system knows what the raw data would be for 0 and what the raw data would be for full. It can make the calculations in between. And on the CMP-20, this is the tank module controller that you'd have to go to do all that. It is actually pretty simple to do. But even though I did try to reset the parameters for this pressure switch, I could never get it to read correctly, and I think my gray water tank doesn't read full correctly either. So I'm at a position where I either have to replace those pressure transducers and reprogram it or figure out another solution. Unfortunately, even though I called this a Silverleaf system, it's obsolete and it's no longer supported. Now, I had hoped that the pressure transducer for the Silverleaf system might be compatible, but it was off by just a few different ohm readings. 3 ohms or something like that. It doesn't really matter. It didn't work. I tried. Now, while the Aladdin pressure transducers are about $150, $200 now, if you can find them, these are a little bit more reasonable, about $75. But because my CMP20 is no longer really supported, if you can find the pressure transducers, like that one right there, because it's an industrial grade one. The last time I saw it online was about $470 for one of them. And I think Beaver Sales out of Oregon has a few left in stock, and I think they're charging north of $500. So now I hope you guys can understand why I'm going to be upgrading the system to a contactless sea level system from Garnet. Especially because at the time that I bought it, it was one of those Black Friday super deals, and it was shipped December 4th of last year. So this is a very long overdue upgrade I've been meaning to do, and it's very important because if I don't know how much fresh water I have, it really makes RVing very stressful. Because when you run out of water, especially taking a shower, that's a bad thing. Now, this is not a sponsored video, but if you do decide you want to get one of the systems, just go to their website. There's different lengths and setups for tanks, so you do need to measure the height of your tank before you get the system going. But I also did want to make sure I got the Bluetooth connectivity on it too. It didn't add any real cost to it, but it gives me a lot more flexibility in the installation. And I have installed this system a couple of times, and it's a very simple system to install. It's going to be even easier for me because of that Bluetooth. Now, while I will be disappointed that the original monitor panel won't be working, I'm not going to try to disable it just in case somebody in the future does want to make a system that does work. And the rest of the monitor panel works pretty well. And while I am disappointed that I will not be able to see the tank levels correctly on the screen right here, they will technically work because I'm not going to get rid of that system. But also, because the ProSign inverter that came with this years ago has been replaced and I don't have connectivity to that, I haven't missed that option on the dash either. So I'm not going to lose too much. Now, why is installation going to be so easy? It's because of that Bluetooth connectivity. You guys have already seen that my freshwater tank is right in between the frame rail right there in the basement, and right back here are the two wastewater tanks. You've probably already seen these before, the black tank and the gray tank. So very good access to both of those. And while on some RVs that have the well nut resistors, you can just hijack that harness where it's going to the monitor panel, I don't have that availability. And pardon my French, I'm definitely not going to be running the wiring harness the whole damn way up here to above the door. Now, while you guys have probably watched me run wirings into the bathroom right here, and I probably could, I don't just have any great locations to put it. I mean, it could go there, but this is solid wood, and notching this out, that'll definitely crack somewhere. Same thing over here. I have almost enough space to put it right there, but I'm going to make it so weak, I can almost guarantee the wood's going to crack. One of my favorite features about this RV is that the walls are very solid, so I can't mount anything right there. And while over here might work, it's actually, I can't get enough space against right there to put it again. And I still have to then run the wires through the floor down in the basement. But that's where the Bluetooth part comes in, to make everything easy. I've already mapped the whole thing out. This is going to be my water compartment right over here. You can already see I have great access to the wastewater tanks on this side. And right there is just screaming for an outside monitor panel. So all I'm going to have to do is run the wiring across the tank right to here. I already have power at the water compartment in here. Because it's a very simple wiring schematic, all I really need is ground power and the blue wire that I'm going to be running the water tanks. And more importantly, I already hooked this up to a 12-volt source, closed the door, started up the engine, to make sure that I could get Bluetooth coverage at anywhere inside the RV, especially when I'm driving down the road, which means I don't lose the functionality that this RV had before, except I can actually check my tank levels when I'm lying in bed holding my phone. Or if I'm sitting on the chair or the couch or the table right there, or even in the kitchen cooking. And like I said, it's a very simple system to install. So let's get down there and get it installed. So the first thing we're going to do is just clean the side of the tank right here. And I am just using my all-purpose glass cleaner. Get all the dirt off of it. We'll just follow up with some rubbing alcohol to make sure that we don't have any oil or grease left on it too. These will fit right about there, so I'll just mark where it's going to go. Just using my marker. Now definitely follow the factory's manufacturer on where to place them on the tank. I'm not too concerned about a perfect reading on it. I'd rather it to be full, reading full when it's not completely full, just in case, you know, we run into problems. But also if your tanks were a lot smaller, there's little sections right here where you can cut it in order to calibrate this, the board correctly. But again, follow the instructions from Garnet. I guess in fairness, it's Canadian, it could be Garnet for all I know. However, before we stick these on, we need to program the sensors themselves. If you look at the top of them, you have a tab right there that says gray, black, and top. So if your tank was so big that you had to stack 2 of these in a row, you would designate one of those to be the top. And of course, you also have to make sure you tell it whether it's a gray tank or a black tank. By default, because every single one of these pads is identical, they're all set up to be freshwater tanks. So if you don't do anything, they're gonna have 3 freshwater tanks. So it might be hard to see, but there is a trace in the board right there for gray on that gray tab. And when we cut it, now we've just said that this is the gray water tank sensor. We'll do the same for the black. Just like that. Now we just have to stick them on in the tanks. Now, because I don't trust anything in the RV industry that requires adhesive, even though I haven't really seen these fall off, we'll use some adhesion promoter right here. Again, to hopefully give it a fighting chance. All right, so this is the black tank sensor where it's trimmed. That's where the toilet's coming in, so that's the black tank. Right there. Close enough. We'll do the gray one next. Just right there. That just leaves a freshwater tank that I'll throw on really fast. It'll be awkward over there. Just about perfect right there. All right, so on all the sensors, all the blue wires get hooked together, all the black wires get hooked together, and they go to ground. The blue wire goes to that monitor panel that we're going to be installing shortly. And it won't be too difficult for me to route along the frame rail here, all the way back there to where the other tanks are. Now, when we're talking about the monitor panel right here, like I said, I got this strictly because it's Bluetooth. This does also offer the alternate route to it also, so if you push alternate, you can have an alternate gray and black. This one, they all come generically with a water pump switch. I wish they didn't have that because we all know that I just recently upgraded my water pump switches on my motorhome. So this I won't be using. On the back side of it, you could just take that switch out and put a blank in, but I don't have a blank to put in. But on the wiring side of it, if we can go to the wiring schematic in a second here, it's pretty straightforward. So if we look right here, you have an orange wire that's just going to go to an optional alarm if you want to install a speaker to let you know when the tanks are low, or the freshwater tank is low and the wastewater tanks are full. I won't be using that. You have red, which is obviously power, and black, which is going to be ground, tying into all the other sensors. They do want to make sure all the sensors are on the same ground. Now white we'll skip for a second. Otherwise, blue, we know that's going to go to blue, and of course the last ones are going to be orange. It's going to be green, which will go to the propane tank sensor. I do have one of those. We'll cover that in a second. And then the last one's going to be white. Now on this setup, white whole roll is for when the water pump's turned on. You would jump from power to whatever switch power it's going to be, and would turn on that little green light right there. Since we aren't going to be using that water pump switch, the only real wires we'll be using are going to be power, ground, blue, which is the sensors, and then green, which was the LP tank. The other two we won't be using. Now I will be installing it right about here in this water compartment. That means when I fill up the freshwater tank, I won't have to guess anymore, because it's been very frustrating because I can't even see the freshwater tank. But the nice thing about it, we've already figured out I have good water access, or I have good wiring access through this access port right there. In fact, if I can get this out of the way completely, just like that. And while I love the stainless steel that the previous owner did on this water compartment, it is going to make cutting out this hole a little bit more difficult. So let me just do that real fast, get this cut out. And while I'm sure the manufacturer would rather you just use the diagram that you can download, there's this cool little insulator pad on the back right here. That's the exact profile of the cutout that we need. I think that'll be about perfect right there. Let's cut it. All right. At least we got it close to where something was before. I think this is going to be the most difficult part, was cutting through that stainless steel. Rotary file. I'll clean this up so it's not so sharp. Ooh, look at that. Like a glove. I got thoroughly modern RV. Even though it's almost 25 years old. All right, so now all I'm really gonna have to do is wire it up. I have power over here, ground over here, run that blue wire across. And while I'm at it, even though I probably don't need to, I will hook up the green wire to the LP tank. Even though the CMP20 does still read this gauge just fine. This is really just a resistor and a float gauge right there. And because I know this RV pretty well, the module for the LP tank is on the wall in this front compartment, just right there. So I can just go ahead and take those two wires on the right and run them this way. I mean, I probably don't have to, but it bothers me already when I see these systems on a all-electric coach without an RV. It bothers me when I see these sea-level systems installed in all-electric RVs that don't have propane, and you push the LP button right there and it just says OPN because it's open. I wish the manufacturer would come up with one that was for all-electric and didn't have the water pump switch, but I understand how many different panels you're going to come up with at that point. Alright, so with that, those two sensors are tied together and into this blue and brown wire over there. Two of those wires go across the frame rail here and then terminate with the freshwater tank. And then behind me, went ahead and I tapped into the harness. So those two wires were just going into that LP tank sensor. So I just cut that and ran the red and black all the way alongside my auto generator start, above the inverter, and then into the water bay. And then over here, you can see the other end of those blue and brown wires that are on the holding tanks. Comes over here. This is a LP sensor, blue, red and black. I looped it over here. What I'm going to do is tap off of the power and ground over here. So this will be the main ground going to everything. And I'll get the power over to here. And I do apologize, I wasn't able to keep all the wires the same color. So blue will go to blue, black will go to black and brown, green will go to red, and then red will go to probably another red. Otherwise, the orange and the white will just be capped off, they won't be used. So, hello, this does look a little bit ugly, but we got ground over here, so we have ground over here, and then power over here, which I did decide to put on yellow, so it wouldn't be quite so confusing. So everything's been hooked up at this point. So now we just have to plug it in. There we go. So battery voltage is reading 12.5. Freshwater tank, 11%. Nah, I'll give you that. That is about what the tank was reading before. Gray is 0, black is 0, and then propane, it says 77%. Or what does that say? 77%. I don't know, it doesn't quite look like 77% to me. So we do have to calibrate one sending unit, which will be the propane sending unit. So to do that, we're gonna have to have the sending unit reading full. Now on this one, it's screwed on. So there's just two tiny little screws holding this thing on. Don't take off these, okay? If you take those off, all the propane's gonna blow out on you. And it's gonna cause an issue. All right, so this is just a magnetic float inside the here. Well, there's an arm that goes up and down with the propane tank level, and it rotates a magnet in there. So I have a magnet right here. We'll see if we can't get this thing to read full. Reading full now. Come over here. Now you should go ahead and get familiar with this panel because you can do a lot more than just push one of the buttons. To calibrate the propane, we need to hook battery and LP at the same time. All right, so we need to hit, I think, black. We go to calibrate, and then we hit that. We did the OK. says it's calibrated. We hit battery to store it. All right, now it's reading 100%, right? So now all I have to do is come back over here. We'll put this back in here and we'll watch it go back down to where it was before, which is below 3/4. All right, 56 a little bit closer. I feel pretty good about that. Doesn't really matter. I pretty much converted this motorhome to an all-electric motorhome. But an outside propane hookup could be added, so you can have an outside barbecue if you wanted to. One thing you might want to note about on the system is you might have to engage the LP sending unit on the touchpad too. Again, we need to go back into the calibrate mode by pushing and holding LP and black. So what it says is basically, and you can turn it on right there, or you can go off. But I want it to be on. And that has to be on in order for it to read correctly, and then you hit battery to stow it. So it comes up on the monitor right there, so you don't get a fault code. But it also won't show up as a gauge on the app unless you do that too. So pretty much, I think we're done. We didn't check the app though. That's just because I still have to put all the wiring back together, and we'll do that. One other thing to note, remember this does have the alternate, so if you had a second gray tank or a second black tank, you would have to engage that. Let's see if I go to gray and black. You can set the number of tanks right with the sending units right there. So I hit alternate, so that says 1 sending unit. I could have 2, or I can go back down to 1, hit battery, that'll store it, and go back out of the calibrate mode. Of course, I still have to clean all this up, put everything back together. It will take a minute. Give me a second. All right, with that, it's done. The Garnet See Level II upgrade is done. And that's it. No more upgrades, no more updates on my 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder. It's a good feeling. I was able to put the basement back together, and with all the upgrades you guys have watched me do, the lights are still working great. The toolbox power tray helped me out many times. But I think it's being able to know how much fresh water I have for reals and how full the gray tank is before the shower overflows is going to be my favorite upgrade now. So usually driving down the road, I have my phone holder right there. Let's see if we have Bluetooth connectivity to the app. All right, let's go ahead and connect. Look at that, 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder, or PT. We can see the propane, the freshwater tank, the gray and the black. Battery voltage we can see too. One thing I didn't know, but you could actually, if you go to settings right here, you can change the color for the freshwater tank, the gray water tank, black, and propane. I guess you could even do the battery. What do you think? Ooh, there's a lot more colors. Let's do purple. Confirm. Look at that. It's a purple lightning bolt now. Now, some people might say I should have put the monitor somewhere on the inside, but I really think on the outside is going to be the most useful, because when you're hooking up your city water hose and you're filling up your freshwater tank or doing the sewage, you really don't want to be using your phone. So you'd like to be able to use the monitor panel out there. But when you're inside, sitting on the sofa or in the kitchen or in bed, you don't have to get up out of bed, go to the hallway right here. And this wood, this cabinetry is too beautiful to put too many more holes in. That's it, guys. That's the last upgrade. But I will say, by installing the Garnet See Level II monitor panel, because I saved at least $1,000, because I would have needed at least 2 of those pressure transducers, but probably 3, so that'd be $1,500. I picked it up on a Black Friday sale for, I want to say, around $200, and it's an incredibly good product. Like I said, it's kind of almost the industry standard when it comes to all modern luxury RVs. They're kind of using it. The Garnet system does support RV bus cam, so even some of the all-in-one multiplex systems that are touchscreen is probably using the Garnet system. It's hot. I'm gonna call it a day. Hopefully I'll be able to do an overview video about all the upgrades you haven't seen me do. But it's time to go home. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Bye. See Level II. Especially because at the time it was a